Hello, everyone. There's been a lot of drama lately about skinny people taking clothes from plus-sized people. And today we're going to look at some TikToks discussing that. Let's begin.
This isn't even my video, but I'm gonna reply anyway. To put it simply, if you are a size extra small, you can fit into clothing that's extra small, small, medium, large, etc. If I am an extra large, I cannot fit into clothing that's extra small, small, medium, or large. If you're down here, you can wear anything that's up here. You can put on anything and it will go on your body. If I am an extra large, I physically cannot put an extra small shirt on my body. Like, your oversized clothing is my size. So it really sucks whenever I go into any store, let alone a thrift store, and there's no good options for me to wear. For example, I went to a concert recently and I wanted to get some merch after, but there was barely anything left. And then I was talking in a group chat with some girls I met, and one of them was like, yeah, the only hoodie sizes left were large or extra large, so I got one of those. So someone who was small had the luxury of getting something that was too big for them. Meanwhile, someone who is big and would have fit into a large hoodie got nothing.
So in the beginning of this TikTok, she talks about how skinny people can technically wear any larger size than their own, which means that they have more options available than plus sizes. And then she uses this as justification as to why shopping is harder if you're plus sized, because only being able to go up in sizes means that they technically have less clothing options than someone smaller. And while that might technically be true, there are, first of all, only a small subsection of skinny people buying larger sizes. That small subsection isn't going up 3 or 4 sizes to buy larger clothes. If someone wants an oversized item, they usually go up 1, maybe 2 sizes. There aren't a bunch of size 4s out there buying size 18 pants for the oversized look. So that small subsection of skinny people buying slightly larger clothing aren't causing any noticeable difference in the availability of plus-size clothing. And if someone does want to buy an oversized item for any reason, they have every right to do that. Just like this scenario she mentioned at the end of the video of her friend buying an oversized sweatshirt at a concert. That's normal. Especially because in this case, there were no smaller sizes available. And this creator's justification for being mad at her friend for buying the larger sweatshirt is that because skinny people usually have more options, then that means that the larger sizes should implicitly be reserved for larger people, even if smaller sizes aren't available. I think that was what their point was, which is weird. We can't regulate who gets to buy which clothing items based on their size. Honestly, this doesn't seem like a systemic problem at all. It seems like a skinny person bought a sweatshirt she wanted, and she's upset about it. Especially because this is a scenario where the creator can't even claim that she needed the sweatshirt and couldn't afford to get one somewhere else. She has enough money to go to a concert and buy a sweatshirt that's probably overpriced at said concert, but she still feels entitled to a large sweatshirt over a skinny person because she's closer to a large size. This whole thing seems very Mean Girls-esque. Like, you bought the last shirt in that size, Kimberly, but I just want to let you know that I think it would have looked better on me, so I think you should give it to me. You are not entitled to clothes you have not purchased. Nobody is stealing clothing from you by buying a larger piece of clothing. You're not entitled to that item.
This is actually an interesting thing that not a lot of people talk about, and I actually didn't know about it until a couple years ago. Which is funny because I have job experience of working at a historical museum and helping take care of historical garments. So yeah, a lot of people like to say historically there's not a lot of fat people. That's demonstrably untrue. I would actually suggest to anyone to check out the Instagram page Historical Fat People.
Pause. We're gonna go look at this Instagram account because I'm curious. So it has vintage photos, including nice to not nice fat people of I don't know what that means. Occasional diet, ephemera. Okay, so bunch of pictures of fat people throughout history, I guess. This woman isn't fat. This person said the same thing. Doesn't look fat to me. Yeah, it doesn't, especially by fat acceptance standards. This woman also doesn't look fat by today's standards. Again, she's not fat. Is this Miss Trunchbull? Matilda came out 25 years ago. Although it was such a formative movie for me, I still hate how it vilified fat characters and had a waif like Miss Honey as the hero. This isn't true. Miss Trunchbull was muscular. They portrayed her as this like really masculine, muscular woman. And that was in contrast to Miss Honey, who was very small and kind of meek. She wasn't fat. This comment says it, but wasn't she like all muscle? Like shred throw kids and stuff? I never thought she was fat. In fact, when they were shaming the fat kid, it became a triumphant moment. They were cheering for him. I don't know, this seems like a reach to me. Yeah, this is definitely a reach. Miss Trunchbull wasn't fat. All of these two are not fat by today's standards. These are cartoons. These women are not fat. You got some historical artifacts that are fat. Winnie the Pooh is here. And so are some dolls. Okay, none of this disproves the idea that there weren't a lot of fat people throughout history. All it proves is that there were at least a few fat people throughout history, which nobody has ever denied. And in reality, it supports the idea that morbidly obese people were rare throughout history, considering a lot of the pictures on this page are cartoons or fictional characters, and a lot of them aren't even fat by today's standards, and certainly not fat by the fat acceptance movement standard of what fat is. A lot of these women would be a size 8 or 10 today. And if the best pictures you can find for historically fat people are a lot of cartoons and size 8s, I think it shows that morbid obesity was actually pretty rare to come by throughout history.
In terms of not seeing fat people in media, that's just a very distinctive choice people have had in the last 100 years. But also, yeah, in terms of garments, once an item could no longer be worn by that person because people would just like wear things until they fell apart back in the olden days. Ready-to-wears weren't a commonplace thing. The garment would later then be upcycled and turned into something else for somebody else who it would fit. That being said, this is different from people nowadays going into thrift shops and buying plus-size clothing and making it smaller because half the items people are buying could still be worn by plus-size people. They're not falling apart. And number two, I think I can say this generally. This once I can make a generalization. A lot of the like fashion specific people who are trying to make like thrifting content for TikTok or Instagram do not need to buy the plus size clothing to turn it into something new. It is not a necessity for those people, for thin people especially, to be buying any plus size items because there are more than enough of their sizes in the straight size sections. And it is bonkers the entitlement that thin people have to buying any clothing that they want.
So she said that thin people don't need to buy larger sizes and turn it into something new because they have enough clothes in their size available. Even if that's true, what's wrong with thin people buying larger clothes and creating something new out of them? That way, they are reusing clothing items that other people donated, and they get to customize a clothing item for themselves. And even if they don't need that clothing item, even if they just want to make a custom item of clothing for themselves, who cares? They can do that. It's crazy to see the entitlement you seem to have for clothes that you don't own. Thin people can buy any clothing item they want if they have enough money to buy it, whether it's in their size or not. That's not them being entitled. That's how buying things works. And it's not like they're buying these items to resell them to fat people at a higher price. They're buying them so they can use them, which is exactly why people thrift clothes. It shouldn't matter whether someone buys it because they want it or they need it. A fat person might come along and buy the item, and they don't need it. It could just end up in the back of their closet and never used until it ends up in a landfill. So as long as the clothing item is being bought and being used, I don't understand why it's a problem.
Yeah, don't do that. It's literally why we all buy from fucking Shein. Like, don't do that.
This dude buying a large pair of pants for a joke on TikTok isn't the reason thrift stores don't have your size. I think this whole outrage over thin people buying all the extra large clothing in thrift shops being the reason that thrift stores don't have plus size clothing is BS. It's manufactured outrage. The truth is that less of the really large sizes get donated or end up being sold in thrift shops because if you're a size 22, it's likely that your clothes will have more sweat stains, chub rub issues, stretching, and so many other physical issues and wear and tear by the time you would donate them. So those clothes can't be reworn or resold. That's just the reality. If you're morbidly obese, your clothes wear faster than if you are at a smaller size. And that's why thrift stores don't have larger sizes. But it seems like all the people talking about this thrifting problem are just mad that they can't thrift as easily as thin people. There were 2 TikToks of dudes that are wearing very large pants as a joke, and Fat Acceptance TikTok has latched onto them as a way of saying, see, people like this are the reason I can't find clothes in thrift stores. So a few examples of thin people buying massive pants has turned into this huge narrative of thin people are taking things from us, and what about poor fat people that need pants? All over a few guys who bought some large pants, which just goes to show that all of this thrifting drama is fake.
Couple of things. My students, just last week, I had them talk about what perceptions they have of me. And a lot of them said that they believed I thrifted most of my clothes. And I laughed. And they were like, why are you laughing? And I was like, because it's so hard to find fat clothes in thrift stores. Like, it seems almost impossible most of the time when I go to thrift stores. There's really not any options. Some of the thrift stores in San Francisco don't even go or collect items above an extra large. And then there's videos like this where it's like, why are you buying those 5X pants? As an aesthetic, right? That's what you're doing. It's an aesthetic for you. When there are fat people who cannot afford clothing, who could have gone there and got a pair of pants that they could have taken to a job interview, or could have taken to the grocery store, or could have taken to an event that they had, but you took those instead for an aesthetic. And I'm so tired of this idea of like, I'm going to do what I want and they're going to do what they want. Well, the problem is that when you do what you want, you don't allow for others to do what they want. Because if you take those 5X pants and that's the only pair of 5XL pants, what are they going to do? Go naked? Just not do anything? I mean, that's what fat phobia tells us, that fat people shouldn't do anything. Fat people aren't allowed to exist and live. So if you want to sit here and be like, you know, I really care about the people and I really want a better world and that's why I thrift, okay, well then also thrift responsibly. You know what I'm saying?
No, I don't. I've never seen an actually poor fat person complain about thrifting. In fact, everyone I've seen complain about this problem seems to have a lot of disposable income to buy excess clothing. Where are the 400-pound people that have no money to buy clothes? They seem to be a myth. And when it comes to money, I guarantee you anyone who is a 5X or larger is spending at least $800 a month on food. At least. And if you can afford that, then you can afford to buy new clothes. Trying to claim that you can be a size 5X and afford all the food it takes to maintain being a size 5X, but also say that you can't afford clothes at that size is the definition of buying what you want and begging for what you need. But that's still a moot point because, again, I've never seen an actual poor fat person of that size saying that they don't have enough money for clothes. And she also said this statement at the end, which was thrift responsibly. The purpose of thrifting is to reuse clothing to prevent it from going to waste. And if the clothes are getting reused, either for a costume or for a TikTok like this man did, or for daily wear, or for upcycling, then what's the problem? Her argument is that someone that is a 5X could have bought those pants if he had left them there. But the opportune word there is could. Those pants also could have just sat in the thrift store for months and months until they were eventually thrown out, which would have defeated the entire purpose of this dude not buying them. So buying oversized pants for upcycling or for whatever reason is still very much in the spirit of thrifting. Much more so than leaving items behind that you have a good use for in the hopes that somebody else will buy it before the thrift store throws it out. And another reason this whole fat poor people can't find pants thing doesn't exist is because anyone who is a size 5X or even a 4X knows that a normal retail store like Old Navy or Target may not have their size. So then why would those same people expect to find clothes in their size at a thrift store? A place with no fixed inventory, which means even fewer options than a store selling new clothes. It doesn't make sense, and it's not happening. And if you say it is, you're very much undermining the intelligence of super fat people, which is why the whole super fat poor people are going pantsless because of skinny people taking our clothes in thrift stores is such bullshit. And the most incomprehensible thing about this whole larger sizes are reserved for larger people, and if you buy them and you're skinny, then you're stealing for fat people, is that fat acceptance is a movement apparently for human rights and social justice, right? And clothes seem to be one of their biggest talking points. They claim that they don't have as many clothing options as skinny people, so skinny people shouldn't wear larger sizes. But could you imagine a protest about this issue? Out on the streets, it's a bunch of fat activists marching with signs and chanting, "Wear your size, wear your size, wear your size, wear your size." Hey, what's going on here? This is a protest to bring awareness to the fact that skinny women are stealing our clothes. What do you mean they're stealing? Like, they're stealing your shopping bags or coming into your homes and taking your clothes? That's terrible. Why are they doing it? No, they're buying the clothes in the store. But those clothes should be reserved for us because we have less cute clothing options. So what if a woman wants to buy an oversized clothing item for comfort or because that's the aesthetic they like? No, that's not allowed. We consider wearing oversized clothing as a type of cultural appropriation. You can wear form-fitting clothes only. That's what we mean by wear your size. But doesn't that defeat the purpose of bodily autonomy and personal expression? You're dictating the clothes that women are allowed to wear and how it's supposed to look on them. No, you're not getting it. Anyone can wear a larger size, but nobody can wear a size smaller. So if skinnies are taking larger sizes, hey, she's wearing an oversized hoodie. What? She's wearing our clothes. Dare she? Get her.
Hey, what are you doing? Get away from me.
Wear your size.
What are you doing? This is my boyfriend's sweatshirt. Get off of me. Victory!
Yeah.
What the fuck?
Here's the thing about y'all thrifting 5XL pants. I'm gonna give you an analogy. I am a middle class person with no dietary restrictions. If I walked my fat down to the community fridge and there was one box of gluten-free pasta there, I don't have celiac, I have no gluten intolerance. I have no need to go to the community fridge. I have the money to buy my own groceries. If I went and took that one box of gluten-free pasta, that means that a low-income person who has celiac can no longer have that pasta. They don't get to have pasta for dinner. They might not get to have pasta for dinner for months. Yeah, I could do it. I can do whatever I want, but that doesn't mean that it's any less f***ed up. Because my action is limiting what they get to eat. And that's not okay.
So the analogy given was buying pants that are too big for you is like taking the last box of gluten-free pasta at a food pantry if you don't have a gluten intolerance. But I've never heard of someone with an allergy ever complaining about not having foods that fit their allergy at a food pantry. Why is that? Because that's a very entitled complaint. If a food pantry runs out of gluten-free pasta, oh well, someone with celiac disease can get rice or whatever other items the pantry still has available. Eating pasta every few months isn't a right, and nobody took anything from you by choosing the gluten-free pasta. This same example could be used for something like peanut butter and almond butter. If someone takes the last jar of almond butter and someone comes later that's allergic to peanuts, then that person might not get any nut butter that day. Oh well, maybe next time. Reasonable people wouldn't complain about this, and they wouldn't see the person who took the last jar of almond butter as a bad person. And if you have celiac disease, and not eating pasta for months at a time is that big of a deal for you, then you can save up money over a 2 to 3 month period and then buy the $3 box of gluten-free pasta yourself. That's not an unreasonable expectation. Overall, I think this analogy of gluten-free pasta and thrifting 5X pants is actually perfect. Because in both cases, buying the larger pants or taking the last box of gluten-free pasta doesn't make the person who took it and doesn't quote-unquote need it a bad person. And it isn't, as this person said, a f***ed up thing to do. And this is another one of those scenarios where choosing not to take an item might mean that that item goes to waste. If food is in a food pantry, then that's kind of its last stop before it ends up in the trash. So if nobody takes the gluten-free pasta because nobody has celiac disease, because they expect someone with celiac disease to take it, but someone with celiac disease never comes along, then that gluten-free pasta goes in the trash. Another thing wasted under the expectation that someone else will come along and use it.
This is a PSA for the skinnies. For the skinny bitches. If when you're shopping, you take your size small and medium and go put it in the plus size to hide it and save it for yourself for later, you can f*** all the way off. Like, honestly, it's so freaking rude. I don't think you guys have no idea, like, how slim pickings we already have as, like, fat and plus size people. All we can pick is ugly animal print and floral patterns. That's the we have to pick from. So when you put a really cute item and we're like so stoked about it, you pull the freaking item out and then you realize, oh, this is a XS. You have no idea how defeating that is. So please, on behalf of all the fat bitches who want to wear cute but can't, don't put your there.
I had to put this TikTok in here because I'm shocked at how serious the tone was for no legitimate reason. This creator told thin women who leave their clothes in the plus size section to, quote, fuck all the way off, because finding a clothing item that you like in the wrong size seems to ruin this person's entire day. But this scenario of finding an item you like is, first of all, not something that only happens when people leave clothing in the wrong section of the store. Most people have had the experience of shopping for an item, finding a piece that you like, and then realizing you picked up the wrong size or that none of that item are still available in your size. This isn't uncommon at all, and it's not a big deal. And second, this scenario is a minor inconvenience. We as people probably deal with a dozen minor inconveniences like this per day. Oh, I'm walking down the street and the sidewalk is under construction, so I have to cross the street to keep moving. Minor inconvenience. Oh, someone parked their car horribly, so it took up 2 parking spots, and now I have to go find a different spot. Minor inconvenience. The grocery store is out of apples, so I have to buy a different fruit. Minor inconvenience. If any one of these scenarios causes you as much disappointment as this creator experienced from finding a clothing item they liked in an incorrect size, then I think the best thing to do is do some introspection as to why something so small can ruin your entire day. This response is multiple stages past a healthy response given the situation. Your major disappointment over a minor inconvenience is not something you should lash out at skinny people for. To me, it just seems like this person is bitter about not having as many cute clothing items as they perceive skinny people to have, so they lashed out over something very small. Overall, half of this clothing outrage is because there are apparently a bunch of poor fat people that are at their homes pantsless right now because of dudes buying pants like this. And the other half of the outrage is pretty blatant jealousy over thin people being perceived to have more clothing options than fat women. That's it. That's all of the drama. And it's nothing real. Nobody's human rights are being harmed in any way. And I can't believe the entitlement people seem to have over clothing items or any item that isn't yours, that you haven't paid for. I don't understand it. But, yeah, that's it. That's all I have to say about all of this drama. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I'll see you in my next video.